Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a geopolitical domino effect of absolutely massive proportions. We're talking about a chain reaction that starts with missiles flying across the Middle East and ends right in the boardrooms of the world's most powerful energy players. We are looking at a fundamental rewiring of the global economy, and honestly, the sheer cinematic scale of this transformation is like something straight out of a thriller.
Think about this for a second. What actually happens when a regional conflict escalates to the point that it fractures one of the most powerful and deeply entrenched economic cartels on planet Earth? For 60 years, OPEC has been the immovable bedrock of global energy markets. But as we're going to see today, even the deepest, strongest foundations can crack when the pressure gets high enough. Okay, let's dive right into this. $111. That number right there? That is where the shockwave actually hits your wallet. That's the price of a single barrel of Brent crude oil, and it is the glaring, real-time cost of chaos. But to really understand why the global market is panicking, we have to rewind and look at the very first domino to fall.
And that all begins with what's known as Operation Epic Fury. That first domino was the sudden, devastating physical destruction of core energy infrastructure. Let's trace the timeline here. March 18, 2026. Operation Epic Fury initiates a massive escalation. Israel carries out a major airstrike specifically targeting Iran's South Pars gas field, which, by the way, is the largest natural gas reserve in the world. Within a matter of hours, the damage to storage tanks and processing units knocks nearly 12% of Iran's total gas production entirely offline. And the retaliation was immediate. Iran launches ballistic missiles at Qatar's Ras Laffan liquefied natural gas terminal, causing extensive damage. Literally overnight, core fossil fuel infrastructure was directly in the crosshairs, creating a supply vacuum unlike anything we've seen.
Now that physical destruction, it instantly triggered a massive, cascading supply chain shock.
You see, the physical damage to those facilities was just the initial spark. Almost overnight, that localized conflict escalated into a global logistical nightmare. I want you to imagine our global supply chain like this incredibly intricate, fragile glass bridge. It's remarkably efficient, but it completely shatters under pressure. With the conflict intensifying, the Strait of Hormuz, this absolutely crucial choke point that normally handles 20% of the entire global oil trade, faced severe blockades. Suddenly, massive tankers loaded with Russian diesel had to just abandon their routes to Brazil and pull a U-turn. Up in the skies, airspace closures forced flight distances to increase by roughly 15% across the board. Cargo planes are now adding over an hour and a half to their journeys, causing operating expenses to just skyrocket. The glass bridge shattered, and literally every industry felt the impact.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the fallout cascades. Academic analysis from the Hellenic Energy Center shows us how what starts as a simple, localized delay for a single cargo ship instantly snowballs into a full-scale global inventory shock. Their research confirms that the highly competitive, hyper-efficient environments we all relied on are actually incredibly fragile when exposed to this kind of conflict.
Which brings us to a real game-changer in global economics: friendshoring. We used to live in a just-in-time world, right? Optimizing purely for the absolute lowest possible cost. But the 2026 supply chain disruptions forced a hard pivot to a just-in-case survival strategy. Nations and major corporations are now happily accepting higher logistical costs as a form of strategic insurance. They're relocating their entire networks to allied nations. It is no longer just about efficiency, it's about survival.
But while the supply chains were buckling, an even bigger shock was hitting the boardrooms. The UAE decides to quit the cartel.
Right in the middle of all this chaos, the United Arab Emirates makes a truly historic, unprecedented move, officially exiting OPEC on May 1, 2026 after 60 years of membership. The sudden supply shortages created by the war provided this perfect, narrow window for the UAE to seek agility and flexibility, finally unconstrained by the broader group.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer weight the UAE carried within the group. Before the war erupted, they weren't just some fringe background player. They were OPEC's third largest producer, holding roughly 12% of the organization's entire global supply. You pull 12% out of a cartel, that fundamentally weakens its collective bargaining power and deals a devastating blow to Saudi Arabia's leadership within the bloc.
To really understand why they walked away, look at this incredible capacity advantage. Think of OPEC like a slow-moving convoy on the highway where Saudi Arabia acts as the pace car. They set a strict speed limit to keep oil prices artificially high. The UAE, though, they are like a high-performance sports car trapped in that convoy.
They have a massive spare capacity sitting on 3.2 million barrels, capable of pumping up to 4.85 million barrels a day, with a target of 5 million. By taking the exit ramp, the UAE can finally rev its engine and leverage that incredible spare capacity directly into an undersupplied market exactly when prices are spiking. But wait, how did they actually pull this off? How could they afford to lose their safety net? It comes down to escaping the resource curse.
You see, there's this fascinating economic paradox called the resource curse, or Dutch disease. It's this trap where nations find sudden massive wealth from natural resources like oil, but it actually leads to stagnant growth, corruption, and a really dangerous dependence on just one single volatile export. When global oil prices crash, the whole country crashes right along with it.
The UAE essentially engineered a masterclass on how to break out of this trap. If you compare a traditional oil state with the UAE model, the difference is literally night and day. A traditional state leans on energy markets as a permanent crutch. The UAE, however, brilliantly used its oil wealth as a bridge, pouring those massive early revenues directly into cutting-edge, future-proof sectors like space exploration, advanced defense technology, and global tourism. So the crucial point here is the staggering, mind-boggling scale of this non-oil infrastructure. We aren't just talking about building a few luxury hotels in the desert. The Jebel Ali port handles over 14 million shipping containers a year. Dubai International Airport, they set records with nearly 45 million passengers in just the first half of 2024 alone. Tourism brought in almost 87 million travelers in 2023. They engineered a vital, completely irreplaceable nervous system for global logistics and human movement.
And they executed this through a very precise three-step formula. Step 1. They utilized the continuity of their stable leadership to make long-term, multi-decade plans without the constant whiplash of changing political cycles. Step 2. To stop the corruption typical of the resource curse dead in its tracks, they gave their financial audit authority, the FAA, serious teeth to strictly audit revenues. And Step 3. They channeled those securely audited early oil revenues straight into creating the world-class logistics infrastructure we were just talking about.
Let's move on and see how this builds out into their international relations, because this completely transforms their dynamic with the rest of the world. Take the UAE-Japan alliance as a perfect case study. Historically, Japan just bought oil from the Arab world, end of story. But now, they've signed this comprehensive strategic partnership initiative. They are actively collaborating on space exploration, advanced climate change technology, and defense. The UAE is literally proving to the world and to themselves that they are fully prepared for a post-oil reality.
Which brings us to where we are right now, the dawn of a completely new energy era.
When you pull all these complex threads together, the sudden destruction of fossil fuel infrastructure, the shattering of the global supply chain, and the strategic fracture of OPEC, you realize we are watching a massive paradigm shift. I absolutely love this quote from the Alba Research Analysis. The 2026 Middle East crisis is exposing a structural weakness in the global economy, the prioritization of efficiency over resilience. That hits the nail on the head. This isn't just about oil getting more expensive. This is a permanent, philosophical shift in how the world operates, moving away from hyper-efficiency to a model that demands robust, unshakable resilience.
Which leaves us staring at a massive, unresolved geopolitical question. With the UAE walking away and taking its immense spare capacity of millions of barrels out into the open market completely independent, what on earth happens to Saudi Arabia? Can Riyadh still act as the central stabilizer of global energy, or is the era of coordinated, cartel-driven pricing just over for good?
Ultimately, the conflict that shattered pipelines and disrupted global shipping lanes might have triggered something even more profound. The end of OPEC as we've always known it might just be the explosive beginning of the post-oil geopolitical era, a totally new landscape where agility, technology, and resilience dictate the new world order. It's an absolutely fascinating shift and one that is going to reshape global economics for generations. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on how these dominoes continue to fall.